Every season maker would know this, that it's always a journey. You throw things at the wall, see what works, do a lot of back and forth. And it's always about approaching the same problem in different ways. When people get too reliant on these things is that they expect one tool to do everything, especially with AI. They think that AI should be able to do everything, and they just continue banging their heads, burning through tokens, just keep on doing the same thing over and over again in the same tool, rather than just trying different approaches, realizing when is the right time to step in and take things in your own hand.
That's Darshan Gajara, and that's the skill this episode is really about, not prompting, knowing when to stop prompting. Welcome to In Practice. I'm Tom Pryor, Program Director of DMBA and your host. Darshan's a design leader with a habit most of us only talk about. He actually ships things. His latest is Beanpresso, an app for coffee obsessives like me. Built with Lovable, launched and refined in the wild. In this episode, he shares his screen and takes us behind the scenes of the how, the real project, the prompts, the dead ends, the bits where the tool got it wrong and a designer's eye had to take over. If you enjoy this one, our newsletter is where I share my personal reflections on each episode, what I actually took away from the conversation, plus you get first word on new episodes and what's coming up at DMBA. Link, as always, in the description. Let's get into it. Darshan, welcome. Really good to have you here on In Practice. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. There's a heat wave here, so that's the only tricky part, but otherwise I'm doing well.
So, some context for people. You're a designer, design leader in your day job, right? You're someone who actually ships things and have been shipping things for quite a while, really. You get ideas out of the door, which I always admire. And the latest one is an app that I am super interested in. I'm a user of, called Beanpresso, which you've built, you've launched, and you've been refining since. So before we look into what your process has been like, how you've built this, what made you want to build something for yourself, and why this idea of all the ones you've presumably got kicking around in your head?
Yeah, like most of my side projects, they start with a personal problem that I have, as people call it, scratching your own itch. I have gotten into coffee quite intensely, and this is something about me that when I get passionate about something, I get really passionate. So I have been brewing coffee for quite a while, and there was this repetitive problem that I used to fall into. So just to give you a bit of context, I think everybody that gets into coffee, they all like to experiment with different beans. So I was also doing that. Mostly when I'm traveling, I like to bring back a bag as a souvenir. And I keep on trying different roasters just to see what are the coffees that I like. And also it's a journey. You like to experiment with it. What used to happen was, as I'm exploring different beans, I was not entirely sure that what my taste would be like and how it would develop. And the specialty coffee beans, they're not that cheap. They at least cost 10 to 15 euros in Europe. If you end up buying the beans that you don't enjoy, it's a constant reminder to you every morning that you still have to drink it because you have spent money on it.
Yeah.
And you might not like it as much. So it's like your morning starts with that reminder to you. So I started taking notes of the coffee that I was brewing, and just to take some notes about the taste that I was feeling. But this process is highly frictional, right? I was doing this in a Notion document, and the process of getting from that coffee to the Notion document was not that seamless. And also, when you are actually brewing the coffee, you are in that morning rush, you have other things going on, or you're just enjoying the experience of brewing. So you're not really using Notion to take the notes. So that's why I thought that I needed an app that would just make it easier for me to take notes of my coffee, and you can call it like a personal journaling. And I'm someone who likes to collect things and likes to take notes of it just to understand how I'm feeling. So that's when the idea was born.
I think there's such a big Venn diagram of designers and coffee that I think it's going to resonate a lot, this story and this app, with a lot of people out there. And I count myself as one of those people as well. So let's get into it. Just as a bit of an overview, what are you going to share with us today as far as your process, tools, the kind of thinking that went behind idea to getting something out there?
Yes, I've built this tool or an app inside Lovable, and initially I started this with Lovable, and the bulk of work happened directly inside the vibe coding tool. And then later, only when I saw that the idea is starting to take shape, that's when I thought that I need to give it a designer's touch now. So then I involved Figma and then did the branding for it. And then it just kept on evolving. I also did a bit of user research, talked to people, got their feedback, then incorporated those changes. So a lot of those things, but it all started inside Lovable, directly inside a vibe coding application. So I can give you a walkthrough of how my setup looks like, and I can take you through the journey of how the idea was born and how it became a reality. Right. So this is my application called Beanpresso. So what we are looking at right now is a landing page. It's pretty straightforward. It's all about remembering the coffee that you're enjoying and then over a period of time getting to know your taste a bit better and developing your taste profile. This is also a community app. So when people share their discovery, their findings, you also get to see them. And you can see the top rated coffees, the trending coffees. And when you click on any of this, you'll also start to see the notes that the community has. Here, I'm just giving you a snapshot of how it works. It's pretty straightforward. You grab a bean bag, you scan it, and the application does the rest. So it extracts all the details like the name of the coffee, the name of the roasters, the country of origin, the flavor profile, everything that you would need to know when you're picking a bag of coffee. And let me quickly show you how this works. So before I take you through the journey of how the application was created, I think it's pretty important that you get to see what we have created over here. You can start with a free account. By the way, this is something very new that I added, your detailed stats. So here you can see that all the coffees that you have added. So in my beans section, and you can see I've added like 16 or 18 coffee already. You can see the top rated coffee. So these are the coffee beans that are added by the community. And as people add more coffee to it, the algorithm becomes more powerful. So you can see what coffee is averagely rated more and what coffee is trending. So trending is based on the number of same coffee added by multiple people, and that's how it becomes a trending one. And you can see that people can upload their own pictures. So I don't have much control over this. Maybe I need to think about it, like how do I make this into good imagery? Because we are designers, we like to see good stuff. And if you open any of the community profile, you can also see who has added what. So you can click on the notes over here, and this will take me to the profile of this user. Similarly, I also have my public profile. So I can share this with other people when they're asking me for recommendations. Or Tom, you actually gave me a great use case the other day when we were speaking about this, that you can also use this as a gifting guide, because a lot of people like to gift you coffee and they generally do not know what do you prefer. So they can just show your profile to a barista and they can give you a gift that you would actually like.
Absolutely. Look, anyone out there watching, if you want to gift some coffee my way, my profile's up there. But yeah, that was my use case. And we'll be getting used for that. So nice few additions that you've made since I last used it, actually.
So this is the big one over here, the stats that you see. So this is a snapshot of the coffee that you're consuming. So you can see that I have had 18 different beans so far from 10 different roasters from 9 different countries of origin. And my favorite origin is India because I've had a lot of coffee from there. So when I click on this, I get to see like a full detailed taste profile. So I can see an interactive map. I can hover on this and this will tell me how many beans I've had from which country. I can also get my flavor profile based on the different notes that I like. It also gives me rating based on how often I try new coffees. So this is 56%, and that's my explorer score. And it highlights my favorite coffee roaster. I will add more things to this, but this is what I have so far. And the journey starts with scanning a bag of coffee. So what I actually want to do is I want to show you how this works. So here I have a bean bag. This is Blue Tokai coffee from India, and I have the application on phone. So I'm just going to click on scan a bag. So it will allow me to take a picture. I'm going to quickly snap a picture. You'll see this in the screen very soon. I know that it's hard to see on the mobile phone, but it's analyzing my bag and it's extracting all the details for me. So it has extracted it now, and I'm going to save it. And let's see how that works. So I'm going to refresh now my profile to see if I have the new coffee or not. So this is it. I just added this, and you can see that it has extracted the name, the coffee roaster, the origin, and the taste. And I can obviously add my own comments to it. If I'm not happy with the image, I can obviously also change it later. So now l- let's go into how I created this application. Do you have any questions so far?
I do. This was an itch you wanted to scratch, obviously. And I think, honestly, nowadays, that's a good enough reason to build anything. It's a good way to learn how to use these tools, to really feel passionate about using them as well, is to find something you're really interested in and play with the tools that are out there. Did you do anything to validate whether other people might also use something like this? Or is it just because you've been in the coffee community for a while, you felt a very strong sense of, I'm not the only one who's going to find something like this useful as a nerd, as a coffee nerd?
Yeah, so I did not set out to just build the app directly. The first thing was to look for applications that allow me to do something like this. And I did find 3 or 4 applications where I could do my personal journaling, but the experience was so bad. Nothing against them, but I don't think they were really created by builders who are also designers. And it clearly showed. A lot of those applications, some of them had like premium features upfront, so I could not add more than 2 bags. Some of them just had very bad design. Some of them only allowed me to add coffee that was there in the database.
So you looked around at these other apps and you were like, they're not cutting the mustard. Don't look like they've been designed by a designer taking that approach. So this was really something you were like, the market's almost validated by the fact there are other apps, but I want to build something much better and maybe more focused on people who are seriously into their coffee without limitations.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The market was already validated for me. More than that, it was I really needed this application. And what I had out there, I was not having it. I needed something nicely designed. And because we have vibe coding tools now, it's much easier to build. So this was like the perfect project for me to do.
Nice. I have seen things like this before. There's a wine app called Vivino, I think, which I've used for years to scan the label of something you've enjoyed, because I'm terrible at remembering what I did and didn't like. I think there's a lot of parity between wine and coffee, actually, like when you get to specialty. So yeah, can definitely see where it's been slightly validated by those kind of apps as well, where you've got similar industries. I would say for anyone out there that is thinking about validating an idea before they start building, actually seeing what people have done in similar industries or similar domains where you've got that overlap like there is between wine and coffee. If there's a gap there, you can move into it. So yeah, really interesting that you saw that pattern.
So when I started building this, honestly, I did not know about Vivino because I'm not into wine. And this never really came up on my radar. But as I started talking to people when I was building Beanpresso, the first thing that they used to point out to me was it's a Vivino for coffee. And that got me thinking. So I started doing a lot of research on Vivino. And now I probably know a lot more about Vivino than most people. I've literally done like a whole download of how they started, what they're doing now, just to get ideas about what I can also do.
Nice. It's a great way to look at ideas for your own app as well, right? I guess probably looking at something that is in the same kind of type of user, but a slightly different domain. So yeah, an interesting way to get ideas and see what's working. Okay, look, I'm dying to get into like how this came together. So let's start getting into some of the tools.
Yeah, I'm actually going to show you the first version of the application, and now it's in Figma. I managed to take some screenshots before I made those updates, and this was never designed, it was directly built. So lucky that I actually took those screenshots. This is how it used to look in the beginning. My idea was that I wanted to just build it out and I wanted to have a feel for it. This is also one of my favorite things to do with AI because AI is just so good at prototyping and you can make things very fast and you can touch and feel things. So that's what I wanted to do. I had given a lot of prompts directly inside Lovable to get the first version out and I started using it myself. So that's why you see that what over here is like a default language of Lovable. Lovable also keeps evolving, so the design obviously also gets better. But I did not really make any design changes to what I was getting over here. My idea was getting the user flow. And being totally honest, I did make some changes, which is typography and colors. I'm a big typography nerd. Anything that's not done with good typography, it gives me a very icky feeling. So the first thing that I do when I touch anything is typography. So I did pick like a font that is not generic in this version of the application.
So these are all screenshots from Lovable. So the first time you were working in Lovable, after you'd made some changes, probably moving away from Inter, not making it purple, so it doesn't scream Lovable one-shotting. Interesting. So that first prompt that you were doing, were you trying to one-shot it just to see what concepts it came up with? What was your prompting journey like for that first version?
Yeah, funny enough, the prompting actually started in other applications. So I have this habit that when I'm thinking through things and when I go on walks, I just record whatever the thoughts that are going on in my head. And then I take that transcript and put it inside the AI tool like ChatGPT or Claude to refine my thinking over there. In this case, I used Notion AI quite a lot. So I had the whole dump of all the thoughts that I had about building this application. Notion AI helped me refine those thoughts. Then I took those thoughts into Claude, asking Claude to give me a prompt especially for Lovable. So this I have found is a very good way to do prompt engineering, that you ask another tool specifically to write a prompt for you for another tool that you're using. So in this case, Lovable. And then what I got from Claude was like a comprehensive, very large prompt describing everything that I needed to build out this application. You can think of it like a PRD, like a product requirement documentation.
So how long was that document? Because some people, when they're maybe first using Lovable, will just start typing away and might give it a sentence or two. Sounds like you were giving it something a lot more detailed than
Yeah,
that.
so this is one page, nothing too deep. It's just that it described how things should work. Because when you just have an idea, AI has to do a lot of guesswork. They have to make a lot of assumptions. Lovable would also actually ask you questions and prepare like a documentation. So whenever Lovable feels that it's not confident enough and needs clarity, would ask you questions. But if you do this elsewhere, you actually do that thinking beforehand and you refine the idea beforehand. So a lot of things you might not think about. And that is exactly what I do in other tools, and I find it really useful. And another thing is that it also helps you to save credits. Like if you're doing a lot of back and forth inside Lovable, it's going to chew up a lot of your credits. But if you do this in a different application and have the prompt already answered the questions that Lovable is probably going to ask you, you're also saving up on a lot of credits.
Okay, so that it meant that first version you were getting out of Lovable was maybe a bit more what you had in your head, maybe a little more robust, a little bit more reliable. So yeah, this is screenshots of that. So yeah, we went from that first version. What was happening next?
So next, the application was already working. I had not really hosted this anywhere. This was still in Lovable, but I published it so that I could use it on my mobile. And this was a web version. And a very important disclaimer. This was always meant to be a mobile application, but midway, somewhere down the line, I realized that making a native application might not be a good idea. You get into a lot of issues with publishing the application on App Store. It obviously also gives you a lot of benefits like discovery, but I really wanted to have this on a day-to-day basis, and I use multiple phones, like sometimes iOS, sometimes Android. My friends, they also use different devices. So I did not wanted to get into this rut of making an application only for one operating system. So yeah, just a bit of a disclaimer that
I was
it
going
was
to ask
supposed
you
to be a
about that,
mobile
like
application.
how that decision was made, because it sounds like maybe at the start it was a technical thing of like, I want to get this out there. And as someone who's built and launched an app, yeah, it's hard work, and getting it approved for the App Store can be a real blocker. But actually, as it turns out, it was a better way of deploying it for you.
Exactly. And I'm going to show that to you. So I was initially just prompting my way through some designs and trying to create like a mood board of what the application could look like. So I've used a tool called Variants over here just to get like a different mood board of how this application could end up looking. And you can see that
How does this
the idea
work?
was
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I think it's a very good application for mood boarding because it just generates like different variations of whatever idea that you have. So obviously, you traditional way would be to just collect references from places, but here what I do is after I've collected the references, I also just give it out to this tool to just create like a blast of ideas. I might not take any of this, and what you can see from the current application that I haven't really taken any of this, but this was a good starting point.
So this is Variant. Variant.com. I've not used this. This is new to me, but this is cool. So tell me, what were you giving Variant? Were you giving it that whole PID, that brief? What were you feeding in for it to give you these variations back?
So I did not give the whole PRD. With Variant, I wanted to keep it very lightweight. So here I actually just described the idea of the application. Just saying that, hey, design me a coffee application. It should extract the details from the bean bag and it should become a journal. So things like that. But it was, I think the prompt was hardly 3 or 4 lines, which was just describing the project. But one other thing that I also did was I gave it like visual references that I collected over here. So this is one app that I found on Twitter. This is another fitness application. So I gave Variant some shots from here just so that it can imagine something on the similar lines. So it was never supposed to be like to be used just as is. It was supposed to be a starting point. So I get inspiration and I can refine it over the line. Also, what I got from Variant was like it did not really understand what exactly I was building, and also to be fair, I did not give the whole PRD. This was just the idea. So Variant was allowed to make assumptions, and that is how I wanted it to be. I did not want it to influence too much.
Gotcha. Let's say go nice and wide, and then you could decide from there. So you decided not to go explicitly down any of these routes. So yeah, how did your visual language evolve?
Yeah, so I actually also started building this for iOS using Swift, and this is what is the first shot. So again, you'd see a pattern over here. So I'm not actually doing any design work over here. Initially, when I'm building it out, I'm just trying to get the bare minimum version using whatever UI kits that they have, but to get the functionality in because user experience was more important to me. So once I had this and the mood board also kept on evolving, then I realized that it was time for me to actually give it a visual touch because it was starting to take shape. I was using it, some of my friends had started using it, so I needed it to have some personality. Then again, very first thing that I did not jump into Figma and like the redesign the whole thing. I again wanted to tinker with typography. So here you can see that I just tried the same thing but with different fonts, mostly to figure out the rhythm of heading and the description. And then I applied this directly, like made this tiny shots and applied this directly inside Lovable. And nothing else was designed. The other part was color. So I was taking inspiration from all this, like my mood board that you see over here, to extract some colors from it and applied it directly inside Lovable. So once I had that, I got this. So you can see that this is still the same Lovable application. You would see the traces of it in the way that the buttons are styled, in the way that the star rating is given over here. So this is still from Lovable, but with different typography and different colors. And you can call this version 2. Now, when this happened, I realized, oh, it's starting to get some personality now. I think it's the biggest differentiator. Once you add different colors and different typography, it already becomes like a different application. Then it was time for me to create the logo for this to give it a proper name. By this point, I had not named it Beanpresso. This was just some coffee app. I think I just called it Coffeegram. It was like a riff on Instagram, but for coffee. So Coffeegram. And I was just calling it that. Then I did some research on what exactly should I name it. Again, took it to ChatGPT, did some brainstorming, came up with a few ideas, did some domain researching, and finally settled on Beanpresso. It was available as a .com, so I bought it. And then once I had the name, this is when I had to create a logo for it, like a brand identity. I again thought that I should try and use AI to get the brand identity done. But I'll tell you that AI is terrible at designing logos. It's also terrible at brand identity. Sometimes you can get lucky and it can give you results that are decent. Like here, I wouldn't say that this is extremely bad, but you can see that this doesn't really have a personality. It's like a very generic logo marks. And I think this was created by ChatGPT. But it helped me at least to get started with this. And then I again tried to use other tools for image generation and create vectors from it. So I got this from that. I did not take any of this because I was not happy with any of them. Then I created my own logo mark over here. So my idea was always that I wanted to have bean in the logo mark because it's Beanpresso. It's all about beans actually. More than coffee, it's about the coffee beans. So it was what do you call a no-brainer for me to have beans in the branding. And when I started looking for this, I got a lot of coffee bean logo marks, but they were like all generic looking and they just look like this icon. It looks more like an icon than a logo. So I started working with it, and the first version that I was happy with was this one. I also tried it with different typography to see like how it really fits in. I got some good feedback on this. So number 4 over here, some of my friends they voted on this one, and number 4 got the highest voting, but it was still not sitting with me. I was not extremely happy with how this was shaping up. Then I think suddenly just on a walk, a lot of my ideas they come when I'm walking, when I'm not sitting in front of the computer. I thought, what if I could play with the letters over here? And I took the letters B and P and tried to create the shapes. And then what I got as BP Beanpresso, it was this one. Now, this alone is not a good enough shape to represent something, and it also doesn't have that visual rhythm to it. So that's how this shape was born. So now this shape does everything for me. It is created from the letters B and P, so Beanpresso. When you combine them, it also looks like a bean. And the journey was complete. So then I took this to explore different color variations with it and finally settled with this. And this is what the logo became then. So I tried it on different images, tried it on different backgrounds, and I was pretty happy with how it turned out.
You've got a nice blend of using AI early in your process to bring your thoughts together in something more cohesive, but then you're still hands-on where it needs it, like things like logos and things like that. How much did you enjoy that process? Are there any bits that you wish were a bit different from how that all came together as far as the visual language?
There's a big difference working on side projects and working on client project or like a project that you work on inside a company where you have other team members involved as well. So getting feedback is very hard over here. You literally have to catch hold of people to get feedback from them. I think that was one thing that I was struggling with. I was doing a lot of explorations over here, but I was not getting that quick feedback to make iterations on it. But in terms of how I approached this, I was pretty happy with how things are going. I wouldn't really change much because you can say that this part, getting into this, I knew that AI is still not at that stage where it can be used for branding. At best, it is going to create like some generic shit for me. But I still wanted to give it a try. I wanted to see if I can quickly put together something as I have something finalized. And you would have already noticed this that I was trying to get the idea out as soon as possible. So that's why initially it was all about functionality and just using the application for myself. This is what the logo looked like. It's just a icon that Lovable was using. And that was not a problem for me. But as I start using it more, I realized that I need to do more. So I was trying to use AI at every stage. Initially, I thought that maybe if I could maybe make the whole project using AI. That didn't turn out to be the case. And then some things became very clear to me down the line is that AI is always like a great brainstorming sparring partner. It allows me to think quickly. It allows me to explore ideas quickly. It allows me to prototype things quickly so that I can get a feel for everything. But it's not great at making decisions. And that's why people always keep going on and on about taste, right? And I think that is still like a mode. If you are an experienced designer, if you know what is good design, you want to still make that decision. And then one thing important to me was reminding myself that I still have the skills. I'm still a designer. I don't have to completely rely on AI for everything. I can create this logo marks. I can get into vector tools. I can get into branding. I can get into UI. So it was a reminder as well to me and reassuring that, hey, you have AI to do a lot of stuff for you, but don't forget that you also can do a lot of these things. And some things are better done by hand than using AI. I think that was like a whole revelation for me.
Anything more satisfying, particularly when you own a project the way you do, you can make that choice of where you maybe spend more time in the craft than you would for a client project, right? If it was client and you've got tight deadlines and stuff, you might be going, we're just going to make do with what we get out of AI, but you can afford to with a side project, keep your hands in. It looks like, yeah, the style came together, the typography came together, your palette came together. How did you then take that direction and translate it back into Lovable?
It was quite challenging, and I realized that Lovable, at least at that stage, was not very good at taking things from Figma and just implementing it. I think even now, the Figma MCP that Lovable has, it doesn't quite understand what's inside Figma and implement it as it is. I think it has gotten much better now. So what I was doing is I was not sending like a whole screenshot. Actually, I didn't even have a whole design ready. So you can see that I was taking it component by component. So once the typography and logo was clear for me, it's a straightforward application that way. So I have buttons and cards, and I think cards are the most dominant component in this application. So then I took a dig at cards, and here I tried designing those cards and also come up with button styles. And then I took this design of cards from here and tried to apply this inside Lovable. So I was taking screenshots of the cards, pasting it in Lovable, and also describing it. And I had to do a lot of previewing. So this is Lovable as you see it. And here, if I go in the history of my prompting, you would see that it's like a long history because I've worked on it a lot. I've spent quite a lot of time on this. But initially, it was mostly like giving images, also describing. And I actually, Lovable also has this visual edit feature where you can click on elements and then edit this. But I always find it to be like more confusing and time consuming than actually just prompting it out. So I would rather just take a screenshot, put it over here in the chat and say that, hey, I have attached a design reference for you. And then I will also describe the changes that you need to make to get it accurate. So most of the times, Lovable would get it and it would give me the exact result. But a lot of times when it doesn't, then I will have to do some back and forth and describe like components to its last pixel. So I will even have to click on the component here, go in the inspect menu over here and specify all the spacing, corner radius, shadows, like all that thing. So that was also a lot of that. I needed to get to granular level as well.
Okay, so you're giving it as much context and information as possible so that your token usage was good. It was a bit more accurate first or second time round. How did you approach the build itself in Lovable? Did you do it per journey? Did you just try and do everything in one go and then refine from there? Like, how did you do it? And maybe how might you do it differently next time round? Because I'm sure you hit a few roadblocks and maybe frustrations along the way.
So I'm just going to quickly show you how this also looks inside Lovable. And I want to share a few insights about my approach to building this out. So when I created some core user flows, so what's the core user flow in this application? It's about scanning a bag and extracting the details. So once you have this card, that's when you have solved for the core user journey. I was not then when I needed to add more user flows, I would not actually just take back the whole thing to Figma, design like the whole flow over here, and then describe the whole thing inside Lovable. I realized that once you have design system created inside Lovable, so it's when Lovable has this main page, it understands what your design system is, even without you specifying it. It knows that you are using this styling for heading. It knows that you're using this styling for buttons, the corner radius styling, the border styling. So it understands that as a design system. And when I want to add a new flow, for example, I wanted to give public profiles. So when I go in my profile over here, you see this page with a catalog of all the coffees that you've added. so you can also share this with someone else. This was not there in the beginning. I realized that people would want to use something like this. I also got some feedback on it. So I did not actually go in Figma and create like this whole page and whole interactions, all those things. I described all of that inside Lovable, and Lovable does a great job of using your design system and creating a fantastic first version. In many cases, it wouldn't even need any changes. In a lot of other cases, it would need that. So once I get that, and if I'm not happy with how the flow is working and how the UI also looks, then I will start prompting again. And maybe in some cases, if I do not know how this would feel, I will take a screenshot, bring it to Figma, make some updates over here, like design it, and then take it back to Lovable and say, design this exactly how it looks like in my design. I did a lot of this in the landing page actually. So this landing page that I've created, initially this was created purely by describing things inside Lovable. So I asked the tool AI to just take what it has inside the application, bring up some USPs for me, and create a landing page in a certain style that I wanted. So I gave it a reference of how the page should flow. And then it just created that whole page. So then I brought it back to Figma, and then I started tweaking it and then taking it back to Lovable. So there was a lot of back and forth like this. And then you can also see that it changes the cards over here, this animation. So this animation is also created entirely inside Lovable, but it was not getting what I wanted in the animation, especially in terms of UI. Like everything was just breaking. The elements were just flying all over the place. They were overlapping. So a lot of those things. Then I understood that I need to give it like the UI for the animation at least. So I brought it back here, created the UI, and then took this to Lovable, but as an SVG, because I wanted this to be like an SVG animation. I wanted Lovable to use the exact components that I have over here. So instead of taking this as an image, I exported this as an SVG, and then I instructed Lovable to give me an animation using the SVG that I provided. And then it did a great job of taking elements and creating animation out of it. And there are a few things that you need to remember when you do this. Your SVG should be light, so you should also optimize it. And as much as possible, you should also name things correctly. For example, if this element over here is a coffee bag and it's an image, then the element that I have on top of it, it's like a scanner. Then I have this components or widgets. So I actually named them correctly. And because I did that, it was easy to describe what I wanted to move, how I wanted things to move inside Lovable, and get that animation, because this is SVG animation. So there are a few tricks that I applied.
You really found the limitations of the AI tool you were using and didn't try and just burn tokens, frustrate yourself trying to make it do something it wasn't right at. And I guess that comes through practice, using the tool enough to find its limits and then go back to the tools you know do work. I think a lot of people go, Lovable, these AI tools can't do the design. If you find the bit that they're good at, but then you go and work elsewhere, that sounds like a really important lesson that you learned as part of this process, like when to rely on Lovable and where its limitations were. I've definitely got to that point of frustration with things like Lovable.
Yeah, I think the problem always is that every season maker would know this, that it's always a journey and you throw things at the wall, see what works, do a lot of back and forth. And it's always about approaching the same problem in different ways. And what happens when people get too reliant on these things is that they expect one tool to do everything. So when they're speaking to, especially with AI, they think that AI should be able to do everything, and they just continue banging their heads, burning through tokens, just keep on doing the same thing over and over again in the same tool, rather than just trying different approaches, realizing when is the right time to step in and take things in your own hand. So I think that mix is really required. And honestly, it's such a playful thing to do. If AI was just doing everything, I think it would be quite boring and also not satisfying at all. But if you are using AI like a toy, it's so much more fun. You decide sometimes you do one thing with AI, you do other thing with your own hands. You also get outside the screen, talk to people to get feedback. A lot of times people also just become so reliant on AI that they would just also try to do their user research, user testing, everything with AI. But come on, you have to know that you also have to take it out.
If you were summarizing what you've learned as far as like how to get the best out of the AI tool of choice, so you use Lovable for this, how would you kind of summarize your approach to the build, like how you broke it down, how you decided what to do in Lovable versus somewhere else?
One thing that I've realized using a lot of these AI tools is that you cannot be dependent on any of these tools. You just use whatever you have at your expense, and you also keep on trying different things. Because these tools are so non-deterministic, you might ask the same question to the same model in a different tool and you would get totally different answers. And I think this is no secret now. People know this, but they forget that when they approach building with AI. So I think now AI is just integrated everywhere. So you don't need to be too strict about your workflow that you have. And I know this that it's very hard. If you have been doing things in a certain way over the period of time, you develop a workflow, you develop a process. But one thing that's very different about AI is that it always keeps on breaking that workflow, breaking that process. And I actually encourage people to just be open to new ideas and new ways of working and just be constantly evolving. What's possible today now to do with a certain tool might not be possible next day. And what I mean by that is the tool might be able to do more. And if you're just too stuck in the way that you work, you're never really going to experience that. So my main thing is to just be free about this. These are powerful tools, but just have a carefree approach with them.
Great lesson there. I think we've kind of fetishized process and tools as designers for a very long time, and AI is forcing us to think very differently. So I love what you're saying there. Be playful, try these things, particularly if you've got a side project, right? If you find something you're passionate about, like the coffee. That's been so helpful, like really interesting to see your approach. And what I'm learning is I've spoken to so many people who build things, they're all doing it slightly differently. I've taken some new things from the way you put this together as well, which I will take into my next build. So we've looked at like how you've built the app, getting the things out there. I think this is the bit that us as designers and builders are so good at. But the hard bit very often, if you want to, is monetizing these things in distribution. I know you're still early in the project, but like, have you given any thought to how you might offer and capture value through the project?
Yeah, I have thought about this a little bit. And one thing that I've just built out this week is this detailed stats. My idea is that with Beanpresso, if you start using it regularly and you add beans to your profile, it should give you an idea over the period of time about the beans that you are into and start giving you recommendations. And again, this was quite a personal problem for me because I used to always think that I am into chocolatey and nutty coffee, which a lot of times turns out to be bitter and usually used for espresso. And that is not what my drinking pattern showed, however, because after I built this, I realized that I'm mostly buying coffee that are of fruity, floral flavors, or sometimes even funky flavors. So that was like a big revelation to me. And now this means that next time when I'm going to buy coffee, especially for brewing it at home using AeroPress, I'm going to be buying more fruity and floral coffee. So I want this insights to be unlocked by other people as well. So what you drink and how you drink it tells you a lot about the kind of taste profile that you have. So this is what I've built, and I'm going to make this like a premium feature. So you'll get some stats. You'll get like the main stats about the beans that you've added and the roasters, countries, your favorite origin. But in order to get like this whole interactive map of your beans from different places, your flavor profile, your explorer score, and I'm also going to add more things to this, like giving you recommendations to buy coffees based on your flavor. So that would be one way to monetize this. The other thing is I've also considered making it into marketplace for coffee lovers and roasters. So this is exactly the kind of place where roasters would want to advertise their products. And because here there are people who actually want to buy beans. So this is a perfect market for them, I think. If the product gets big enough, it starts adding value to them. I think right now, since I've just started and it's not that big, I don't think it would be very beneficial to roasters, but as the number goes up, it can become more beneficial. And then maybe I can start charging some fees from the roaster for discovery. So those are the two things that I've thought about to monetize it. But full disclosure, I am very open to this suggestions and feedback that I get from people. So I am building this as I get feedback from people. And this idea of marketplace is honestly not mine. A few users that joined Beanpresso initially, they told me that they wanted to get recommendations of coffee that they can buy, and mostly, especially the one that delivers to their place. So this idea came from them.
I think it's interesting. You've got a couple of potential business models there, right? You've got the kind of user side, but you've also got the kind of roaster. So yeah, different kind of down the value chain. That's really interesting to be able to play with both of those. I'd be interested to see how you end up testing those models as well. What you talked about numbers, not too many at the moment, but maybe when it gets a bit larger, have you started thinking about distribution at all? Are you doing much on the kind of marketing side of things at the moment?
So I'm looking to build little tools that can help people on their coffee journey. And this would also help me with marketing and reaching more people. So one of them is flavor profile. This is like one of my first experiments. This is like an easy guide to coffee flavor profiles. And anyone who tries different beans, what they really care about is flavors. And they always get confused about how to read what's written on the bean bags and how to make sense of it. So this one is like a very simple guide. It tells you major flavor categories, gives you description of that. And this labels over here, it's also linked to how they show up in your Beanpresso application. So you can make like a direct connection to it. And then it gives you a little bit of insight about how you can use the coffee flavor wheel. This is something that you get with at every roasters. And there are some instructions about how you can use this, how you can read it. So this is one of those tools. I'm thinking of doing more simple tools like this, or writing blogs, or also recently I did a Instagram post where I did a recommendation of the best specialty coffee places in Berlin. And this picked up quite a lot of traction actually. A lot of the roasters here in Berlin, they also reshared this on their Instagram. And who doesn't like free recognition? So I'm thinking of doing stuff like this.
Clever way to do it, right? Start tagging them into these posts and then they do a bit of reshare and engagement with you. I've been to 19 grams in Berlin. That's really good. So you've got an SEO play with your articles and stuff like that, a bit of a social play as well. Hopefully this is going to help a little bit too. Good that you're starting to think about that stuff. That's often the biggest challenge with these projects. And it's often something designers don't feel as confident to start trying out. Are you using AI at all to help you with this stuff, like writing the blog posts or creating the Instagram posts, that kind of thing?
Yeah, AI is very beneficial in that. So this style that you see over here, I did not create this inside Figma. This was all created based on prompting. When the new model came out of ChatGPT image model, I actually just wanted to take it for a spin. And that's when I thought maybe I can create a post like this. So I gave the current aesthetics that I have for the website, and I asked ChatGPT to create a post like this. It does a very bad job when you ask it to do like multiple things at once, but it does a very good job when you are precise in asking what you want. So once I had the style ready, then I asked ChatGPT to create like more of these images based on my recommendations. And then the flavor profile that I just showed you, this is also based on the information that I found online from different articles. I rewrote that into my own writing style, and I have a writing MD file for that because I've done a lot of writing online. I've developed a style, so I gave my style to it, and I told AI to rewrite the copy in my style, so it should look like it's coming from me, which essentially is because I do a lot of review and change it. But this information is not something entirely new that I'm sharing. It's just packaged in a different way. So I'm using AI to do that.
Very useful for spinning up these experiments with promotion and distribution as well. Good to see that part of the process as well, because it's so important if you're trying to take something from just a side project into something that could potentially be monetized. Last thing before I go, what I love about this episode is the gap it kind of closes. Most designers, I think, have a Beanpresso in them, like you, like an idea they've talked about for years, And the honest reason it doesn't exist isn't ability anymore, because I think, like we've talked today, the tools are there. It's just they haven't sat down and done what you've just shown us, right? The distance from idea to live thing has never been shorter, and you've walked us through it in an hour. So for anyone whose coffee tracker or whatever their version is still stuck in their head, where can they get inspiration from finding out about Beanpresso, maybe playing around with it? How can they follow you? Because I know you share stuff around all the kind of things you're building and your whole workflow and stuff like that. So yeah, how can they find out about Beanpresso? How can they find about you? And yeah, I don't know if you want to give us a preview of anything you're up to next.
Yeah, sign up for Beanpresso at beanpresso.com. It's just like espresso, but beanpresso.com. And you can use this on your iOS, on your Android, because it's a web application, and you can just save it and then it becomes almost like a native application. If you want to get in touch with me, if you have any questions about this, you can. The easiest way for you to reach out would be on my Twitter. I'm at Weirdo Wizard. It's a very old username. Don't ask me why I've not changed it. I love it. You feel free to reach out with any of this side project related questions. I don't bite, I can promise that.
Not at all. You've always been I've always enjoyed our conversations. I've enjoyed this one just as much as well. It's been great to get behind the scenes of how you've put this together. Cool. We'll put links to Darshan's Twitter, his LinkedIn, his websites and various projects in the notes for this one. And maybe we'll have you back sometime when you're building the next thing or the next version, because yeah, these tools are changing fast. Darshan, thank you so much for joining us on In Practice. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you again soon.